board. I'm trying to remember exactly where we got him at. We gave him a little bit of a Greg Cosell bonus earlier today. He's now in the 23 spot on our board, and he was borderline right around the threshold of the Packers. So people were anticipating him running a sub 4.540, and obviously he hit the mark there. So I'd have a hard time believing he wouldn't meet all of the thresholds for the Packers based off of that. So, Drew D, I remember when 4.4 was fast, and now people almost dock wide receivers for 4.4. It is wild how the 4.3s and the 4.2s have become a little more common. Definitely the 4.3s, but great point there, Drew. So, since we're talking about wide receiver here, let me make a note here too. We had our boy Greg Cosell on with Ross Tucker earlier on their show today. If you guys are not subscribed to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, you're missing out. You hear us say Daddy Sodas all the time. That's where I got that from, was Ross Tucker. Ross Tucker is an OG former offensive lineman, obviously has his own podcast now, and does a heck of a job. It has several podcasts, actually. But here was Greg Cosell actually talking about, who was it here? Matthew Golden. It sounds like, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, if I didn't hear it correctly, it sounds like Greg Cosell is saying Matthew Golden is his number one receiver in the draft. Let's hear it.
What happened at the Combine really had no bearing on my worldview.
Was there a number one guy or a guy that really jumped out that you loved, Greg?
The guy that jumped out to me, and again, I saw him before the Combine, was Matthew Golden from Texas. And he obviously ran exceptionally well. I don't think he plays exactly to his 4.29 40-yard dash time at the Combine. But to me, I thought that he has really good route running refinement. I thought that he had separation quickness. I thought he worked from multiple splits in Steve Sarkisian's offense, and that's an offense that does a lot with the pass game. I thought he had a really good feel as a route runner with the pace and tempo of different routes, changing speeds through his vertical stem. I think he's a 3-level dimension. I think there's a vertical element to his game. He was a receiver that I thought would be ascending when he gets to the league. And he's not this receiver at all in terms of traits, but the receiver last year that I felt watching his college tape that would ascend once he got to the league was Brian Thomas. And that worked out that way. And I think Matthew Golden, to me, kind of falls into that category. I think he'll be an ascending player once he gets to the NFL.
There you go. So Matthew Golden, obviously on the radar big time there for the GOAT, Greg Cosell. What's your all's thoughts on that as Matthew Golden is sitting in the 33 spot? Does that change your opinion on him at all, seeing that right off the bat, Ross said, what's the one that grabs your attention the most? It's Matthew Golden.
It makes me want to go back to the film room, and watch a little more tape because, looking at PFF grades and even just going by the numbers, there's a reason why I can understand some people are lower on him than others. But, when you've got an OG like that telling you what he's seeing and, makes you really think twice and makes you want to kind of check your own work, do a double take. He only graded out at a 74 last year on PFF, just under 1,000 yards receiving. But he's got that interesting build. He's at 6 feet, 195. So he's not rail thin, but he's not super thick. Right. And I think he also brings the, we talked about kick return and punt return ability. I think Matthew Golden is certainly that caliber of receiver that could kind of bring that to the table, which, a lot of rookie receivers do that in their first couple of years of the league anyway. And we kind of need it right now, especially since Mr. Nixon doesn't want to return kicks for us anymore. So I'm all for a multifaceted player. So I think at the very least, this makes me want to pay a little more attention to Matthew Golden. Some have him number one, some have him, like you said, in the 30s or, 40 spots. So
there you go. Jacob, what about you, man? Matthew Golden.
I'm not quite sold on him yet. I think that there's a lot of flashiness with that. With the trip he made to Indianapolis there, I think that really catapulted him a lot into the forefront of a lot of people's drafts. Although Prince, though, we'll go back to that super chat quick.
I want to say this because people may take that the wrong way. One thing, and you guys didn't hear this, one thing that Greg Cosell specified was all of these write-ups, all of my rankings came before the Combine.
Before the Combine.
So that is important to mention there. But go ahead.
Yep. Yeah. I'm just saying for me personally,
Right.
I believe that was a bigger influence there. But Prince is talking about how Golden being the best route runner is becoming a theme. I'm starting to see that as well. So if he really is like that type of precise wide receiver, then obviously I wouldn't mind him being on the team. It's just whether or not I want to have him at 23. I also think that he maybe is enjoyed a little bit of loose protection because of the fact that Isaiah Bond was opposite of him, who was also pretty speedy as well, and maybe dictated that they have a little more coverage on him. So that's my only thought about there. Also, too, for this Matthew Golden face, that'd be hilarious. I'm gonna dig up your dead wife and do her real good.
Wow, that just Emilio said it best. Look at him up.
I'm not.
We'll edit.
You're an amazing person. You know that, don't you?
Not
Thank
sure
you,
if
Rich.
that's going to
Thank
make
you,
the
Rich.
final.
I was not following that up. I wasn't gonna be the one that had to talk after that. Rich had to bring it up.
That's the best line in the whole show.
I'll tell you, let's hit this super chat. Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate you, buddy. Mike Witt with the super chat says, I can't wait to be at the draft and boo the Vikings and Bears every time they pick. LOL. Golden reminds me of Greg Jennings a little coming out. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Greg Jennings was a precise route runner.
Yep.
And the big thing about Matthew Golden, as I talked about too, man, you guys know I'm not a fan of the Underwear Olympics. To me, it was just when he ran that 4.240, it was, whoa, didn't see that coming.
Yep.
But again, in the SEC championship, he had arguably the best game of his career in the SEC championship, which big games, big time players show up in big time games for sure. Emilio, you got anything to add on Matthew Golden?
I was going to add to that point. The fact that they go to him in those key situations is key. I mean, that team had a lot of talent on it, but you're going to go to Golden each time. I think that's killer. He came from the University of Houston before, right? And I think he broke a record there his last year before he left Houston. And then as he came to Texas, broke their record for receiving yards or catches, I think, in Texas. So, I mean, the dude has skill. I'm not going to doubt it. He's being talked as number one. It's between him, Burden, and Mack, and it's kind of crazy how much movement there has been on that from the wide receiver perspective versus last year, where Harrison's going number one overall. We're good to go. We have 10 or 12 maybe wide receivers in the top 50 or 100. It's now we have maybe 4 or 5 in the top 50 if we're lucky. Like it's a different draft this year. It really is. So if you have the talent and you need that up front, go for it. If not, I think you can find some gems in the end.
Definitely. And again, Mike, thank you so much for the super chat, bud. We appreciate you. Since you bring up Isaiah Bond, Jacob, obviously lining up opposite of Matthew Golden, and we just completed I don't think we completed the top 30 visit yet, but there's one at least scheduled. I haven't heard whether or not they've already been in the house. Maybe Drew has that information. I know he's local there and gets a lot more info there in Green Bay in that regard. Isaiah Bond's scouting report, I just threw one together real quick. Obviously, they scheduled a top 30 visit. Some of these numbers are going to be a little off. You're going to notice that some of the combine numbers, some of the measurables might not match completely. It's because it was pulling from multiple sources, but you get the gist of the information. So scouting report coming out of high school. He was a 4-star recruit from Buford High School out of Georgia in 2022. Isaiah Bond dazzled with speed, winning state track titles, 10.51 100 meter and a 21.19 200 meter. Scouts praised his playmaking and vertical threat potential, projecting him as a multi-year starter despite needing polish in the middle of the field or in the middle field. Before enrolling at Alabama, Bond was ranked number 71 overall in the final Rivals Top 150 for the 2022 class, placing him among the top national prospects and number 11 at his position. It goes on to say college statistics. Bond's college career spanned Alabama in 22 and 23 and Texas in 24. At Bama, he posted 17 catches for 220 yards as a freshman, then 48 catches for 668 yards and 4 touchdowns as a sophomore. At Texas, he recorded 34 receptions for 540 yards and 5 scores, plus 98 rushing yards, totaling 99 catches for 1,428 yards, 10 touchdowns. Detailed scouting report says at 5'11", 180 pounds, Bond blends elite speed. 4.3 is what they got him listed at here. That was before the 4.2. With sharp route running, he beats press with quick releases and shines on deep balls. Though physical corners can jam him, his hands are reliable and he's dangerous after the catch, but His slot build raises durability concerns. He projects as a Z or slot receiver with Jalen Waddle-like upside. Injury and character concerns. I've been throwing this into the scouting reports just to do a little background check. Injury history is relatively light, with his most notable setback being an ankle injury in 2024 that limited him on 2 catches for 30 yards across Texas' final 5 games. No major injuries were reported during his Alabama tenure, though his smaller frame has scouts wary of long-term durability. On a character front, Bond has no public red flags, no suspensions, legal issues, or documented team conflicts have surfaced. His transfer from Alabama to Texas after Saban's retirement appears driven by opportunity rather than discord, and he's been praised for work ethic at both stops. So he was a Nick Saban recruit, and when Nick Saban retired, he just decided, hey, let's take it over here to Texas, get some better opportunities. So I like that scouting report, man. Everything kind of checks out. No major injury concerns as long as the ankle checked out. When you run a 4.240, I'm pretty sure the ankle's just fine, right? So any thoughts on that scouting report, boys?
Ready to go.
I was thinking they were asking him to stay in Alabama.
I'm not going to, so quit asking.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
Hey, you had me at no injury concerns and no off the field issue concerns.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
Definitely sounds like a Packer guy, right? There's no doubt about that. And somebody earlier actually had some breaking news in here, Tim, if you want to give me some breaking news. Mr. Chuck Jaggers, Mikael Hardman's contract, $1.17 million with $150,000 signing bonus. Jacob said, that's right. That's called a deal right there.
Hit that Walmart discount bin.
Exactly. And I've got the details pulled up here. I won't put them on the screen, but we'll read them off real quick. Like he said, 1.1 is the base salary. The signing bonus, $150K. Got a roster bonus of $91,000, workout bonus of $50K. It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And the dead cap is $150,000 with that signing bonus. Simply meaning, if you do go out and draft a receiver or two, and Mecole Hardman doesn't make your team, then you're just on the hook for $150,000. That's it. That's chump change. So good signing there by Good, I think, man. You like Ryan pointed out many times before, you cover your backside there so that if the draft doesn't come to you properly and you can't get a big name receiver, someone that you feel real good about, then what you can do is just kind of press into Mecole Hardman, maybe flex Jaden Reed to the Z and move the Z around a little bit more than you might have done before. Mike Witt with the super chat says, I think Golden will be good. That being said, give me a D tackle at 23. Tim, did you write this? And then trade up early in the day in day 2, I think is what he meant, for Higgins or Royals in round 2.
Here's the guy.
I like it. I like that game plan there. Anybody have any thoughts on that before we get to Jaden Higgins? Tim, this is a surprise for you, sir.
I don't think the D tackle is going to be Tyleik Williams anymore. But I still like the game plan. I want to go trenches early. I mean, O-line or D-line, honestly, at this point in the first. But, it also depends on, got a lot of people picking before us. This board could shape up totally different than anybody's predicting. So you got to go best available, right?
Definitely. And since he brought up Jaden Higgins there, I think everybody on this stream is on board with the Jaden Higgins with 54, right? I don't think
He was the best guy around.
There you go. So here was Greg Cosell and Ross Tucker. I keep wanting to call Ross Tucker Kraft every time. And Ross Tucker talking about Jaden Higgins. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with this one because it wasn't like, what do you think of Jaden Higgins? He literally asked Greg Cosell, hey, who's a guy that, who's another guy that you like? Right. And this is the guy that he handpicked along with his teammate, Jalen Noel. We're going to cut that out for time purposes, but here's Greg Cosell and Jaden Higgins.
Wow. Okay. Who else you got?
The other guys I wanted to mention who I find fascinating are the 2 Iowa State kids. The big kid is Jaden Higgins. And I've done this kid for 2 years now. And I really, really like this kid. I mean, because he's 6'4" and 1/8, again, you're not going to say that he's sudden and explosive, but he's effortless in the way he moves. He's kind of a speed cut route runner. If you give him the more horizontal routes like slant, glance, crossers, overs, routes like that, I just think that he's a really good player. I mean, 6'4" and 1/8 is a trait. He's a big dude. So the question is, Is he a boundary X at the next level, meaning the single receiver to the short side of the field? Guys that get a lot of one-on-one coverage, and can he win in those situations? Or at 6'4" and 1/8, the team see him more as kind of a movement Z, the guy that's in motion on the strong side of the formation? I think that's a question that'll be discussed. The other.
All right, so there you go. The way he talked about him being fluid and everything, he handpicked him out of the crowd. So we gave him the bonus, the Greg Cosell bonus we talked about. It's official now, boys. With the Greg Cosell bonus, Jaden Higgins and Trey Harris are tied at 46.3. Notice he didn't say a thing about Trey Harris on the entire episode. He didn't mention Trey Harris one time. It doesn't mean Trey Harris is a bad player. It's just he's not one of Greg Cosell's favorites. So after the Greg Cosell bonus, we got Jaden Higgins, like I said, tied with Trey Harris. So that's pretty fascinating. Now, you guys heard me before, and I want to get your take first, Jacob. When we talked about these two guys, I would always throw the caveat, yeah, but Trey Harris is higher on our board, right? Well, now they're tied. So now who's got the better hands? Jaden Higgins. Who's better at man coverage? Trey Harris, right? So it's who's got the bigger frame? 6'4", Jaden Higgins. I think I'd have to lean towards Jaden Higgins big time now, big time.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I just am more starting to think that I don't think either one of these guys is going to be there if we just sit and patiently waiting at 54. I think there might have to be a little bit of some draft goodiness going on where either they draft, trade back out of that 23 pick, accrue a little bit of a later one and try to move up, or try to do a little bit of moving up and trade. I mean, I don't feel like that we're going to be able to stick and pick and have it go the way that we've all, especially Mr. Tim, have wanted it to go. And I think that there's been too many people like Cosell highlighting guys like Harris and Higgins. I don't know why I can't get that right, but I just think that there's too much shiny glitter and gold around both of these gentlemen to be there at the 54 spot. So I'm a little nervous to see how we would play the chessboard and make that work, but I'm excited to see if Goody does and what happens at the end of it.
Yeah, and the way he was kind of talking about Noel too was like, hey, he's kind of got that skill too. It's not that, he just doesn't have quite the frame that Higgins has. I'm not mad at it. I mean, if Higgins is off the board, you could make that as an option. But looking at Higgins, imagine when Christian gets back, if you had 2 6'4", 6'5" dudes on the side, spread out wide, it's jump ball central. It opens up a lot, but then again, are you looking at it? Is that too many big dudes? I don't know.
Yeah. And Zach here, Tim, we're going to get your take, obviously. This is your boy. Zach in the chat says, only way I believe the Packers are able to get Jaden Higgins, who I hope we get, is if we trade down in the first and pick up something to trade up into the 40s to get him. Jaden won't be there at 54. Now look at the latest mock draft information here. The latest mock draft that was done on Jaden Higgins here, at least the information that was put in, CBS on March 25th, so yesterday, had the Packers taking Jaden Higgins at 23. Pro Football back in February had the Packers taking him at 23 as well. Now, back in January, you had the Buffalo Bills taking him at 32. NFL Trade Rumors had the Bills taking him at 29. And, of course, you got the Lions. They had the Lions taking Jaden Higgins at 31, 4 different mocks there by the same guy at CBS. And that was back in October and November. Here he is in round 2 by the Draft Network to the Packers. So you're seeing that the highest he's been drafted through the process, and most recently was actually 22 by Goody. I'd have no problem with that, Tim. If Goody takes Jaden Higgins at 23, that means he's got a legit first-round grade on that cap, and he's probably even better than we could have imagined.
I would be shocked. I really would. Happily shocked, don't get me wrong. And, I don't really have much to add to the Jaden Higgins conversation other than what I've already said. I'm sure everyone who's watched the pod or listened to the pod and watched the live shows, they know where I stand on Higgins. I've been carrying that torch for months and months and months. But, hearing Greg Cosell talk about him makes me feel like I'm actually seeing things pretty well, I guess, because I know what he's talking about. But I will say this. I'm with Jacob. I think that Jaden Higgins, to me, first round pick at 23, yeah, that would mean Goody's in love with him, right? First round grade. Let's pull the trigger. But I think he's somewhere between there and in 54. I'm kind of leaning towards, Jacob's mindset here is that he may not necessarily go, top 20, top 25 picks, but I don't know if he's necessarily there at 54. We've seen mocks go either way. So
I feel like he doesn't make it out of the top 40, Tim.
yeah, I agree.
That's what it feels like to me too.
Which makes me feel good about the conversation that we've had about Goody trading back and loading up on picks and trying to maneuver his way to a Jaden Higgins or whoever else he's got a high grade on, So I would not be blindsided if that first round pick gets traded here in next month. We're about a month away.
Are we thinking, Tim, because in my head right now, dream scenario would be obviously we're up at 23. You've got maybe 2 or 3 of the D tackles or edges that we really, really liked. And we say, all right, we want to trade down anywhere from 5 to 10 picks, pick up maybe a third or a fourth, or maybe even if it's something crazier, a little bit better, drop back 10 picks or whatever. Maybe we pick Higgins there. Why can't I do it? And then maybe we have another defensive stud that's there that we can, I'm trying to figure out the best way of hitting all of the needs, the best player available, and still having the draft capital to either be there in the later second round or so to maybe try to swoop him up, or the early second to try to swoop him up. Logistically, I can see it. It's just kind of muffled until the draft actually, the chips start falling. But man, it'd be fun, wouldn't it? To just like watch him trade down, then go back up in. All of a sudden you see the dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, and what if our first 2 or 3 picks, you got a D tackle of some, marker that we absolutely love, and you got Higgins, and go from there. I mean,
Mike Whitworth. He says, if Ted McMillan starts slipping and he's still there at 19 or 20, do the Packers think about trading up for him? Curious. It just depends on the grade that Goody's got. And I know that's a boring response, but if Goody's got a grade on Tet the way we do, because Tet just climbed up the board again, boys, with the Greg Cosell bonus.
Speaking of a hyped up receiver right now.
Yeah.
Ted McMillan is 5th now, 5th on our board, which is crazy. Are you seeing it, Emilio?
I'm seeing it. And that was something I was the dude's just getting better each time. The only thing holding him back is RAS, but it's not like he's not built on a frame of 6'4", 6'5". Dude is an athlete. I think he was, he played volleyball in high school. I think he's got that sort of, mentality. I think he was Arizona's highest recruit ever. He, broke, he was doing whatever there, tearing it up. It's highest recruit coming out of Arizona now. If that continues on the trajectory of him leaving high school, going into college, going into the NFL, he's going to be a freak. He is. But I don't know, man. What are we going to do? Just have just a bunch of slinky dudes on the outside and no speed? I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah, so obviously Tet in the 5 spot now after the Cosell bonus. Would the Packers trade up to 19 or 20 to get him? If this is what Goody's board looks like, and he's fallen that far, and they got a trade partner where they could trade up and give up, say, swap first and give up a third to go get what they may think is the number 1 receiver in the draft. Sure, but keep in mind, Greg Cosell said he thinks Matthew Golden's the best receiver in the draft.
Right.
And that was including Travis Hunter, by the way. He thinks Travis Hunter, everything he's heard through NFL executives and coaches, is he's going to be a cornerback with wide receiver packages, is what it sounds like.
Right,
So,
and Mark Dominic on GM Shuffle had Luther Burden III, LB3, at the number 1 wide receiver with Tet number 2 and Golden 3. So,
to build off of what Mike Witt just said, Emilio, what if Tet falls to 23? You don't have to trade up and get him. It's going to be hard not to run that card up there. The way Greg Cosell talked about his fluidity, he said he reminds him of Drake London. He's that type of prospect.
Right.
I think we should run a mock like this at some point where we pull the trigger on receiver at 23. However, we got to get there and see, because I'm curious to see how that would affect, going D tackle or going O line or edge, second, third round. How would that? Yeah, corner. How would that pan out? Because I haven't even, I don't know, maybe I'm just naive, but I had no idea in my head for even a second that we'd be going wide receiver in the first round. But when you look at, like you said, Clayton, the grades on some of these guys, and then combined with the visits and, you know, what we've seen and other people have seen, it's not out of the realm of possibility that we go up or down to try and get a receiver early.